Movies have been a cultural powerhouse for decades. Whether we're going to the cinema to watch a new release or streaming something from the comfort of our homes, movies mean a lot to our society. Naturally, we need people to make these movies, which is where studios come in. Now, the majority of studios have been catching a lot of flack recently, constantly being blamed for a variety of issues within the film industry, and for good reason. But there's one popular studio that always seems to avoid the complaints of creating lackluster movies with poor working conditions, so let's talk about them. Today, join me as we discuss the birth of A24. Let's go back to 2012. Obama was president, Gangnam Style was topping the charts, and The Dark Knight was battling it out with the Avengers to make the most at the box office. In this year, David Finkel, Daniel Katz and John Hodges came together to form A24 Films, named after an Italian motorway. The trio were art film buffs with a load of industry experience that noticed the type of films they'd like just weren't really being made anymore. Using a couple $1 million of seed money from Guggenheim partners, A24 Films began as a distribution company, meaning they would buy the rights to already finished films and handle their marketing and release. They began renting an office in New York as the trio wanted to avoid the executive-filled vapid conversations of LA and Hollywood. And they also wanted to be around the best basketball team in the world. A few months after the company started, Nicolette Eisenberg joined as head of publicity. A24 Films had a unique outlook on the film industry. They wanted to replicate the efforts of Miramax and Searchlight Pictures in the 90s, finding creative, unique filmmakers and just letting them do their thing. This work started in early 2013, where the company distributed its first film, Roman Coppola's A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swan III. Yeah, this film stank, losing approximately $17 million at the box office when you factor in marketing costs. Thankfully for A24 Films, they didn't bankroll or produce the project, but this still wasn't a great start for the company. Thankfully, the next few films distributed by the company, which included The Bling Ring, Spring Breakers and The Spectacular Now, did a lot better, which was definitely a large factor in the massive $40 million deal they signed with pay-per-view streaming platform DirecTV Cinema in September that year. This deal stated the streaming service would offer day and date releases 30 days before the theatrical release by A24 Films. In this same year, A24 Films signed a deal with Amazon Prime, meaning the movies the company distributed will be on Prime Video after the physical releases. The next couple of years were mainly successful but uneventful for the company, distributing films such as Ex Machina, The Witch and Tusk. 2015 would see A24 Films enter the production game, starting a TV division of the company that worked on Playing House and Comrade Detective. This division would eventually go on to become hugely successful, producing hits like Euphoria and Beef, but let's stick to going in chronological order. 2016 was the biggest year for the company at this point. First of all, they dropped the films from their name because Sean Parker told them it was cleaner. Now just A24, the company did incredibly well at the Academy Awards with 3 wins out of 7 nominations. The studio also acquired the rights to Swiss Army Man. I'm sure this is insignificant and the directors won't go on to change the future of the company forever. A24 also joined BitTorrent Now this year. They also worked with a bunch of banks to do things I don't really understand to raise their line of credit from $50 million to $125 million. Essentially, they had big bucks. Whilst all these things are cool bits of information, they're not what we care about. The big change A24 made in 2016 was that it actually became a film production company. This meant the studio would create its own original films, rather than just distributing already finished works. Now, producing movies is hard, and naturally it takes a bit of time to figure out. You can't expect a new studio to make one of the universally accepted best films of all time on their first try. Oh. Yeah, A24 did very well in their first outing, which set the company up brilliantly. Moonlight was a smash hit, which really helped the studio's reputation. So far, they were only really acknowledged by people in the industry, but this film was the start of a snowball effect that would change all that. There are a couple complications around Moonlight's awards. The film's script was based on a play, which would normally put it in the Best Adapted Screenplay category, but this play was never published, meaning some award shows considered it for the Best Original Screenplay category instead. Oh yeah, there was also the massive mistake of Academy Award presenter Faye Dunaway being given the wrong envelope and reading out that La La Land had won Best Picture instead. Despite now producing their own movies, A24 still distributed films, further diversifying their portfolio in 2017 by acquiring the rights to Menashe, their first foreign language film. The studio continued distributing throughout the year, showcasing art house films that often had elements of contemporary and surrealist horror. Some highlights from this year were A Ghost Story, Good Time, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and Lady Bird. A24 only produced 2 feature films in 2017, The Lovers and It Comes at Night, both of which were pretty well received by critics but not loved by general audiences. They both still made a profit though. In February 2018, the studio started the A24 podcast, a show where 2 members of the film industry sit down and just talk about films. The first episode was between Barry Jenkins and Greta Gerwig, but other guests since include Ari Aster, Paul Thomas Anderson, Michelle Yeoh and Martin Scorsese. The next month, co-founder of the company John Hodges announced he was leaving the company. A24 said he was exiting to focus on future opportunities, but didn't give any clarification past that. Hodges said he was proud of the company and his work there, so it's clear he left on good terms rather than due to any behind-the-scenes arguments. 2018 was a good year for A24 in terms of production. The studio worked on Hereditary, 8th Grade and Mid-90s. These films were all received really well, with Hereditary making more at the international box office than any other film the studio had worked on, including films they had distributed. This record stood until 2022 when a certain other film did kind of well, but we'll talk about that later. November 2018 saw A24 sign a large deal. This was with Apple, stating A24 would produce multiple original films for Apple TV. This was not a first look deal, which, for anyone that's not a nerd, meant the studio could still make other movies outside of this deal and could keep any other deals with other companies. About a year later, A24 signed another deal, this time with Showtime Networks. This deal stated the premium cable network could broadcast all A24 film releases until November 1st, 2022, excluding those from the Apple TV deal. A couple months later, in December 2019, the studio released Uncut Gems, part of the Adam Sandler Rebirth era. This became A24's highest grossing film in North America, beating Lady Bird by raking in $50 million. Due to COVID, the studio had a quiet next year and a half. They released a few films, including First Cow, On the Rocks and Minari. Their shows in this period included Eric Andre Legalize Everything and Moonbase 8. In the summer of 2021, it was reported that A24 had been exploring buyouts from multiple companies. It was never disclosed exactly who the studio was having these discussions with, but it was revealed these conversations had valued the business somewhere between $2.5 and $3 billion. To put into perspective how much that is, Amazon bought MGM for $8.45 billion at around the same time. This means that, at its maximum sale price, an 8-year-old A24 was worth more than a third of a 97-year-old industry giant. Even though this buyout never happened, these offers show just how effective A24's methods of filmmaking and marketing are. There's something coming soon that definitely would have skyrocketed these prices even higher, but hold on just a second. In April 2022, A24 launched a membership service called AAA24? A24? Anyone that pays the subscription fee gets access to exclusive merch, early merch drops, monthly discounts on merch, a birthday gift, access to the A24 app, and a zine every 4 months. 2022 was, from a release standpoint, the best year A24 has ever had. Films like X and Pearl were huge in the horror genre. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On was a heartwarming tale that critics and audiences both loved, and The Whale saw Brendan Fraser return to the world of acting to huge amounts of critical praise. But there was one film this year that blew every other release absolutely out of the water. Everything Everywhere All at Once is A24's most acclaimed, most recognisable and most important film. In fact, it's probably the reason most regular people have even heard of the studio. This film is a masterpiece, exploring themes of family, love and existentialism through the lens of a genre-bending multiverse mashup of literally everything you could think of. When I first watched this film, it immediately became my favourite movie of all time. It's not my favourite anymore, but I still hold it in incredibly high regard. Don't just take my word for it though. Let me tell you about the most important night in A24's history.
And the Oscar goes to Everything Everywhere All at Once. Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Michelle Yeoh. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Kiwi Quinn. Jamie Lee Curtis.
And the Oscar goes to Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That's just one film.
The Oscar goes to The Whale, Brendan Fraser. The Whale.
One 10-year-old studio, 18 nominations, 9 wins. It's safe to say the 95th Academy Awards belonged to A24. On this night, the company became the first studio ever to take home the top 6 awards, which are Best Director, Best Picture, and the 4 acting categories. 5 of these were awarded to Everything Everywhere All at Once, with Brendan Fraser taking home Best Actor for his performance in The Whale. Obviously, these 6 weren't the only wins for the studio, and these 2 films weren't the only ones mentioned during the ceremony. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On and Aftersun both received nominations, but were not awarded any Oscars. After this incredible night, and many similar wins at the Golden Globes, Critics' Choice Awards, the BAFTAs and many more, Everything Everywhere All at Once became the most awarded movie of all time, beating The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. Not bad for an indie studio. This film was, of course, the most important part of A24's story, but it's not quite the end. In May of 2023, A24 joined with German distributor Leonine Studios to form the creatively named label A24 Leonine Studios to distribute films in Austria and Germany. Soon after, Peter Rice, who was previously the chairman of Disney General Entertainment, signed a deal with A24 to become an independent producer. This meant that Rice would co-finance films to be distributed globally. You may remember the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes that lasted for about half of last year, which halted all major productions. These were due to disputes between the writers and actors unions and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Unlike most studios, A24 have no ties to the AMPTP, and because they're not dickheads, they were allowed to continue production during the strikes. Recently, there have been a lot of reports that A24 is looking to change from art house films to more commercial films. This information has come from multiple sources, varying from journalists to production executives from the company. Whilst there's nothing concrete about these rumours, many fans of the studio are concerned by them. As we've seen throughout this whole video, A24 has been a place that filmmakers could go to be weird and creative, and not worry about studio executives trying to force them into a box. This freedom has resulted in creative triumphs like The Lighthouse, Midsummer, and Everything Everywhere All at Once, just to name a few. On a personal note, I really hope these rumours aren't true. Everything Everywhere All at Once was the movie that got me into movies, and the first review I ever wrote was for the A24 film Men. If it wasn't for this studio, I might never have discovered my love for this art form, and I don't know what my life would look like if that was the case. Right now, the studio is in a good place. They've recently released Has Been Hotel, their first fully animated project on Amazon Prime, and signed a deal with the United Talent Agency to produce scripted and unscripted TV. At the time of writing this video, The Iron Claw has just come out, which was an incredible telling of the story of the Von Erich family that critics and audiences both loved. A24 has a very bright future ahead of it. I just hope that they continue to seek out creative filmmakers to produce high quality works of art that rebel against the consumerism dominating cinema at the moment. This studio is incredibly unique, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed hearing A24's story, I would really appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed to the channel. I have a lot of cool projects I'm working on at the moment, and I'm excited to share them all with you in the future. Once again, thanks for watching. Bye.